Today, I'll be going head-to-head versus Microsoft Copilot to see who can create a better login screen for Excel using the VBA coding language. Here's how it's going to work. We're going to give Copilot a prompt. We're going to do this 3 separate times. Each prompt will become more and more detailed to help Copilot avoid making errors. We're doing this from the perspective of someone that does not write VBA code and who just wants to copy and paste the code into their workbook. Our primary objective is to protect an Excel workbook that contains classified information, aka my diary. Our top priority is to stop people from accessing my diary unless they have the correct user credentials. For each prompt, I will copy the code, test the code, and see what happens. To pass, the code must meet all of these requirements, which would be expected for a basic user login screen. It should deny us access initially and present us with a user login screen. We should be getting valid feedback in response. The code should work straight from Copilot without having to do any editing. Remember, we're doing this from the perspective of someone who doesn't write VBA code, so they wouldn't know what to edit. And obviously, it should allow us access if we provide it the correct credentials. It should also contain 0 compile errors or debug messages, which means something is wrong in the code, that the code is essentially broken until it's fixed by someone who knows what they're doing. If the code still works correctly after that, then we'll consider that a valid pass. And the sad part is, even if it meets all of those requirements, it will still be worse than the one I created in just 15 minutes. Let's take a look at that one now so we can see what Copilot should be striving for. As you can see, we have our diary in the top right-hand corner of the screen. Let's go ahead and click on it. And you see we are not presented with a workbook, but instead we are presented with a form or a login window. Now, this is going to look a lot better than what Copilot's doing because it's not doing any formatting, but we only care about function. So let's look at how this functions. If we go ahead and just click login to see what happens, we can see one or more fields are empty, and it's telling us that we're missing information. Okay, so we can't access by just hitting login. We'll put username again, and we'll put pass. It's important to know, or it's important to see, that our password is covered right now. And if we click this little checkbox, it will show us what our password is. So let's go ahead and click this. And incorrect password. The password you entered is not a valid value. Please double check your input and try again. And again, it clears out both of these text boxes. Let's go ahead and look at this little button in the bottom right. It just says admin, so we'll click that and enter the admin password. Let's enter something that is not the password. You're not the admin. Okay. Now let's give it correct user credentials. So we have username and password, and we will log in. And as you can see, we now have full access to our document. In the lower left part of the screen that you can't see, there's a tab called User Credentials. That is the tab we are on right now. This contains all of our user credentials that allow access. It's important to know that these are headers at the top, and these are user credentials. So if we change this, and we save this and close it, we can now open this up again. It will open our login window. If we try username and password like we did before, even though that is what the headers are, this will not be a valid value because it's looking below the headers only. So now if we type in user and pass, it will allow us access. Let's go ahead and get started by giving Copilot our first prompt. This prompt is going to contain the least amount of detail, but will probably resemble most prompts given to AI right now. Not very detailed, not very good, and we'll see what happens. As you can see on screen, we have our first prompt here, which I think is pretty fair. I have a blank Excel workbook. Can you produce VBA code that will do the following? Design and create a login window that does not allow a user to open the workbook until the correct username and password is entered. I want to copy and paste the code so it works without editing. Pretty straightforward, and it meets our main objective. Do not allow access to the workbook unless they provide the correct username and password. And we want to do this so we do not have to edit the code at all. Let's give it this and see what it does. All right, so we have our instructions and our code snippets here. We are going to follow this line by line so no one can complain that I didn't follow its instructions like it said. Okay, so I've opened up a blank Excel workbook. You can see it still says book 1 because I haven't saved it. It's a brand new workbook, and we're going to follow these instructions line by line. Press Alt F11 to open the VBA editor. I'm just going to open it like this. Now our VBA editor is open. Insert a new user form. Okay. Insert user form. Okay, so we can design with labels, text boxes, and buttons as shown below. Let's do that. Create the user form design with the following controls. Labels for username and password. Okay, how do I create a label? If I'm new, I have no clue how to create a label, but since I know how to create a label, I will. So already not giving us very much detail. We'll put username, and we will copy that, and we'll put password. Okay, so now we have a label for each one. Sure. 2 text boxes for user input. Name them text username and text password. Okay. So again, if I don't know VBA and I don't know how to code in VBA, this is not going to be intuitive, but I know what I'm doing. So I will put a text box there, and I will put a text box here. Okay. Name them text username and text password. This is already a big mistake. It should not be forcing people to rename things in VBA, because if this is a new workbook, which the prompt said it was, I have a blank Excel workbook, it should know the default name is text box 1 and text box 2. That would eliminate an entire step and confusion for the user having to edit this name. Now we have to ask it how to change its name. Since I know how, we will do it. We'll be gracious. Here we are. And it's going to be right over here in properties, if your properties window is even showing. Okay, so we will update both of those text boxes. Where is it? Right there. And one command button for login. Name it command login. Okay. Go here. We'll create a button. Create a button like that. Let me make this a little bit bigger and move this down here. Okay. And name it. Again, we have to rename it, which will be over here. Command login. Okay, and we will edit the text to show login. As you can see, we have a basic login form now. And it was pretty straightforward for someone who knows VBA and knows how to update things. But if you don't, this would not be straightforward. Double-click the command login button to open the code window and enter the following code. Okay, we'll double-click. You can see we have now a subroutine, which is where code is executed in VBA. We'll copy this. Won't even look at it yet. And see, this already won't work. I told it explicitly I want to just copy and paste, and it should work. What this isn't taking into consideration is when you hit when you double click this button for the first time, it automatically provides you with a start and an end. Private sub with the name and sub. Now, if we tried to run this like this, since we have two subs declared without an end sub in between, this would cause an error. So it already fails our requirement of copying and pasting without having to edit. So we are going to delete these because I have a feeling this is going to happen for every prompt we have, which it's not the end of the world, but it already doesn't meet our requirements of I want to copy and paste and I want it to work. All right, we are on step 6, insert the following code in the This Workbook module. Okay, we will copy this, click on This Workbook, and we will paste this. All right, and this will ensure that the login form appears when the workbook is opened, and the user needs to enter the correct username and password before accessing the workbook. You can copy and paste the provided code as it is without any modifications. That is not true. Make sure to replace your username and your password with your actual credentials. Enjoy your secure workbook. All right, let's go back and update those like it told us to. As you can see, it did hard code our username and password because we didn't explicitly tell it to put or to search for the username and password on the user credential sheet like we want. In this case, the username and password is hard coded here, which for one login credential is not a big deal. But this is not ideal. We will follow the instructions as provided, update these to username and password. So this is what we should be entering when we attempt to log in. And we will see what happens. So remember our passing credentials, the first and most critical one. Deny us access to our workbook and show us the login screen. Does it pass? We will open the workbook and we get a compile error just upon opening the workbook. We followed the instructions step by step and we get a compile error, which opens up the VBA editor automatically, and we'll see what's going on. Login form.show. Okay, let's double check to make sure I didn't make a mistake. And as I suspected, I did not make the mistake. Copilot made the mistake. On step 3, insert new user form. Go to insert user form. Doesn't it know that the user form name by default every single time from a blank Excel workbook is user form 1? And in our code, when we open our workbook, we are calling login form to show, but there's no such thing as a login form. It does not exist. This should say user form. So we have failed because it contains more than 0 compile errors, and we've had to make several modifications. So let's go ahead and be gracious again so I can show you how this still doesn't work. Open the file again. Our user form now produces because I fixed Copilot's mistake, and as you can see, we have the workbook open in the background. This is not supposed to happen. This is supposed to deny us access. Let's see what happens when I just close the user form. Oh, look at that. We have full access to the workbook. So we can see prompt 1 had the least amount of detail, and it was a catastrophic failure. All right, we are on prompt number 2. As you can see here, we have refresh Copilot, so it has nothing there, and we have prompt 2 in front of us. You can see it is a little bit more extensive than the one before, so we added some more detail. We have a blank Excel workbook. Can you provide VBA code that does the following? When the workbook is opened, if there's more than one workbook open, hide the window of this workbook, but if no other workbooks are open, hide the application altogether. That is an explicit command to say when we open this workbook, do not show us the workbook at all. Only show us the user form, which comes in point number 2. Create a user form that will pop up and allow the user to log in. Once the user has entered the correct username and password, the workbook will open and the login window will close. There should be a sheet in the workbook that contains all usernames and passwords for the code to refer to when users log in. Assume there are only 2 columns, username and password, when writing the code. I want to copy and paste the code so it works without editing. When the workbook is closed, if there is more than one workbook open, close this workbook only. But if no other workbooks are open, close Excel completely. So that is one of our other criteria to not interfere with other open Excel workbooks. Let's go ahead and give it our prompt and see if it can do any better than its first attempt. All right, so we have a new Excel workbook open and Copilot has finished giving us its answer. I can help with that. Below is the code. Okay, let's follow this completely to make sure nobody blames me for Copilot's mistakes. You'll need to place the code. Okay, I can help you with that. Below is the VBA code to accomplish your request. You'll need to place the code in the This Workbook module and create a user form named Login Form with 2 text boxes. Okay, so this is a lot of steps pounded into one sentence or a couple sentences. That's not good. We need more clear instructions because we're assuming we do not know what VBA is. So right here, it's just telling us you need to put it in this module and create a user form. I don't know how to open up VBA if I'm new. I don't know how to create a user form. I don't know what a This Workbook module is. So already not the most detailed like we saw before. And let's see. Here's how to set it up. In the This Workbook module, okay, let's go to that. Copy this. Okay, we will paste in this. We will go to in a new user form, login form. Let's go here. Add the following code. Okay, let's go into the user form. Let's view the code, which isn't explicitly told how to do that, but we will copy this and paste it here. Create 2 text boxes and name them user text username, and text password. Create 2 buttons. We already did this. It's telling us to do the same thing twice. Make sure that there is a sheet named Sheet 1 in your workbook containing 2 columns, A for usernames and B for passwords. This should get you started. Copy and paste the provided code, and it should work without needing any edits. Feel free to customize the user form and messages as needed. All right, let's get rid of that. And let's check it out. Let's do a quick review. I see some issues already, but we will display them for you guys here in a minute. Okay, we've now saved this as prompt 2. We have a sheet that's named Sheet 1, like it requested. Let's double check to make sure. It's over here. Sheet 1, there is no space between sheet and 1. That's exactly what we see here, Sheet 1. And we'll put username, password. So these are our 2 columns that are going to contain all of our usernames and passwords. Let's go with user 1, pass 1. So that should be the only thing allowing us to access our workbook. All right, now we have prompt 2 saved here in front of us. And that prompt was pretty extensive. We did provide Copilot with more information than I would say most people do when they use AI bots like this. So we'll see how it does. Let's go ahead and open it up. Okay, we already see an improvement. The workbook does not appear, and we only see the user login form. Let's go ahead and just hit cancel and see what happens. Okay, that looks pretty good. Open it back up. Good. And let's enter. Let's just try to log in without entering anything. Oh, would you look at that? It let us in when we didn't enter anything. Now this failed, obviously. And I would argue A regular person that doesn't know VBA would have no clue why this is happening, and it wouldn't be very obvious. So this is our line, and it's looking in all of A, which means it's looking in all of this, saying if you find the value in the username text box in this column at all, then look over here into the password column and compare that to the password text box. And since this column contains not just one, but many blank cells, it's considering a blank value a valid username. And then it looks over and says, okay, your password is blank. It checks our text box, and it is blank as well, and allows us access. So it's not even smart enough to consider two blank values not a valid login credential. Not very good. And that one was much more detailed. So that is pretty bad that it failed that quickly. The good thing is this did work by copying and pasting, because I did it a different way. It didn't tell me how to do it a different way. I just thought to do it a different way. But again, if you're new to VBA, you wouldn't know to do that. So let's jump right into prompt number 3, which is going to be a lot of detail. And if it doesn't meet our basic criteria, it's going to be very disappointing. All right, we have our prompt level 3 in front of us, and you can see here we have 10 points of detail. We explicitly wrote in here, if either the username or password field is empty, it should check and verify. It should check before verifying if they're correct. So we should tell them that it is blank. So we need to tell it to fix that, because it's not going to know to do it on its own. So this is just getting more and more detailed. This is becoming, I'm taking on more of a designer, and it's really hard to design a feature blind, let's say. The reason I was able to build my login form so well and to catch all of these corners inside cases is because as I built it, I ran into the issues, identified, yes, this is a potential user error, and build code for it. When you're just designing a prompt and giving it to a tool to produce the code for you, you are not going to think of all the potential user errors or AI errors where it doesn't even check for blank values, which is ridiculous. So we're taking on more of a designer role, and you have to know a lot about your end goal in order to design it in a way where AI won't screw it all up. And this is basic, meaning it's not integrating with other code. This is a self-contained program, and it's only one feature. Imagine if this was a large-scale project with thousands of lines of code written by different people, or maybe even other AI, and trying to integrate and avoid errors. It seems like a mess. Okay, so it's produce our instructions and our code. All right, we have our new blank workbook open, and we will start. Open the editor. It is now open. Let's get our little window here. Insert a user form. You got it, boss. Design the form with text boxes, username and password label, and command button for login, and checkbox to show/hide the password. Add another command button in the lower left for admin access. Okay, let's do all of that, even though it doesn't tell us how to. We'll just do it. All right, so we got all of this put in like it told us. It didn't tell us to rename anything. It didn't tell us to do anything except put them in. So we have our labels, our text boxes, our buttons, and our checkbox. Perfect. Step 2, add the VBA code. Paste the following code into the appropriate sections. This workbook code. Okay, again, we'll go here. Paste that in. Great. User form code, add the following code to your user form. We'll copy that. View code, paste. And we have 3. Add text box username for the username. Okay, so now it is telling us to rename. Okay, this code should cover all your requested functionality. Okay, thank God. If Copilot was good at what it did and didn't suck like it does, and caused a compile error just when I opened the workbook, which is wild. And we already ran into this before. Wrong username. And it didn't tell us to rename the user form. But we will. And we'll take this opportunity to look at the passwords because I don't think we had any set up. Username, password. Okay, and we're going to do the same thing. User 1, pass 1. Those are our only two credentials that should allow us access. We'll now save, and we will close the workbook. We have it here in front of us, and we'll see how it responds. We hit a second compile error. That's 2. That's what second means. Variable not defined. Okay, you can see we have, since VBA has the option for option explicit, which VBA should always have. You have to enable it though. Max attempts needs to be defined. So we've already failed. Prop 3, complete failure. Let's say it didn't, right? Let's say it wrote it correctly, which it doesn't because it sucks. Let's see. Yep, we'll dim it for it because it can't do anything on its own. We'll open it up again. Look at that. No compile error this time. All right. And we will log in. Username and password fields cannot be blank. What if 1 is blank? Okay, it checks both. Good. Let's type in our password. Hello. Our password is covered. All right. So we have met 2 criteria after we've edited. So we've already failed. But just for fun, let's take a look. It denies us access to our workbook. That's great. It gives us feedback. Good. Works straight from Copilot without edits. Failed. Hide our password unless we want to see it. Yes, that is true. Allow us access when the correct credentials have been provided and contain 0 compile errors. That is a failure. Okay. So our password was user1. There was a space. And pass 1. What am I doing? Pass 1. Okay. And we'll show. Nice. Log in, and it allows us access. Finally, something is working. Okay, we'll close this. It is going to let us in when it's not supposed to. Right here. Username, password. It will show, and it allows us in. The reason it's doing this is because it's looking, like I said, in the entire column A, and in the entire column A, our headers are contained. So anyone would be able to access this document unless the headers were removed or code was built in to ignore the headers. So let's just do a quick recap. Prompt number 1, catastrophic failure. Very little information given and very little capability returned by Copilot. Prompt number 2, another catastrophic failure. Does not meet our entire objective of just keep people out. It lets you in with blank credentials. Prompt number 3, we had to give it a ton of information, become a design expert basically, and it still has plenty of bugs, and it just had out of the box 2 compile errors that I had to fix. This is an extremely simple feature in VBA with no integration to other code, to other applications. I mean, this doesn't connect to the internet. This is just a small 50 to 100 line project. And even with extensive design and prompting, it still failed on several different levels. So I hope this was eye-opening. And if you're thinking about using these AI tools to help you in anything Excel or VBA related, and you don't want to learn VBA, just go ahead and reach out to me instead, because this, as you can see, didn't work at all. Thanks for watching.